Rain tapped gently against the leaded windows of the Queen's solar in the heart of Windsor Keep, a stone fortress nestled in the English countryside during the late 14th century. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of beeswax and dried lavender. Isla, a 20-year-old maid with chestnut hair tucked beneath a linen coif, moved with quiet precision through the chamber. Her yellow frock, faded from countless washes but always clean, brushed against the oak floor as she dusted the carved furniture. Her task that morning was simple: polish the Queen's dressing table. But atop it lay the Queen's most prized possession, a Venetian hand mirror with a silver-gilt frame, said to have been gifted by the Dowager Empress of Constantinople. Isla had been warned never to touch it. Yet as she reached for a velvet duster on the high shelf behind the mirror, her foot slipped on the freshly waxed floor. She flailed, catching the edge of the table, and the mirror tumbled. The crash echoed like thunder in the silent room. Shards of glass scattered across the flagstones, glittering like fallen stars. Isla dropped to her knees, hands hovering over the wreckage, her breath caught in her throat. She knew, in that instant, that her world had shattered with it. Before she could gather the pieces, the heavy oak door swung open. Queen Eleanor stood framed in the doorway, her dark velvet gown rustling as she stepped inside. Her eyes, sharp as flint, fell immediately to the broken mirror. A silence stretched, colder than winter stone. "You were told never to disturb this table," the Queen said, her voice low but edged with steel. Isla bowed her head. I only meant to dust, Your Majesty." I slipped. "Excuses are for children," the Queen interrupted. "You are a woman in my service. You knew the consequence of carelessness." She turned to the corridor. "Steward." Moments later, the head steward appeared, his face grim. "Take her to the punishment chamber after vespers," the Queen commanded. "She will answer for this insult to the crown." Isla was led away, her yellow frock damp with sweat despite the chill. Servants averted their eyes as she passed. In the castle, everyone knew, to break the Queen's mirror was not merely an accident, it was a breach of sacred trust. That evening, the punishment chamber glowed with the flicker of tallow candles. Stone walls absorbed every sound, making the room feel both vast and suffocating. Isla stood before the Queen, who sat regally on a high-backed chair draped in crimson. 2 guards stood sentinel. The steward held the birch rod, thin, flexible, and cruelly familiar to those who had erred. "Remove your frock," the Queen ordered. Trembling, Isla slipped the yellow garment from her shoulders, leaving only her thin linen shift. Her bare arms goose-pimpled in the cold. The steward bound her wrists lightly behind her back and guided her to the low bench. 10 lashes, the Queen declared, "for the pride you forgot and the duty you broke." The first lash cracked across her back. Isla gasped but held her cry. The second burned like fire. By the 5th, tears streamed down her face. On the 6th stroke, she could bear it no longer. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," she sobbed, voice breaking. "I never meant to dishonor you, or your house. I only wanted to serve well. Forgive me, please." Her apology hung in the air, raw and honest. The Queen studied her for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. The final lashes were lighter, still painful, but measured. When it was over, Isla collapsed forward, shaking, her shift clinging to her sweat-dampened skin. In the weeks that followed, Isla was reassigned to the laundry wing, far from the Queen's chambers. Each morning, she scrubbed linens in icy water, her back still tender beneath her new, plain frock. At night, Alone in the servants' dormitory, she traced the fading marks with her fingers and wept, not from pain, but from shame. She replayed the moment endlessly. The slip, the crash, the queen's frozen stare. She had not been malicious, but negligence in service was its own kind of betrayal. She missed the solar's quiet beauty, the dignity of tending to royal spaces. Now, she felt unworthy even of the castle shadow. One gray afternoon, as Isla hung freshly dried sheets in the courtyard, a royal page approached. "For you," he said, handing her a small cloth-wrapped bundle before vanishing. Inside was a new yellow frock, finer than any she'd worn, dyed with saffron and stitched with delicate embroidery along the hem. Tucked within the folds was a wax seal bearing the queen's crest. No note, no words, but Isla understood. She changed into the new frock that evening, the fabric soft against her healed skin. The next morning, she returned to her duties with quiet resolve. She would never again take her place for granted. And though she never saw the queen's face soften toward her, she carried the unspoken pardon like a hidden jewel, proof that even in a world ruled by crowns and consequences, grace could still find its way through stone corridors and shattered glass.